John Reynolds had never planned on becoming a father, let alone to 5 daughters. But life had a way of unfolding in unexpected ways. It all started 25 years ago when he came across a news segment about 5 orphaned girls, sisters by circumstance, not by blood, who were about to be separated due to the foster care system. Something deep inside him couldn't bear the thought. At the time, John was a simple carpenter in Ohio, living a modest life. He wasn't wealthy, and he certainly wasn't prepared to raise 5 children alone. But none of that mattered. What mattered was that these girls needed a home, and he could give them one. It wasn't easy. There were days when he worked late into the night just to put food on the table. Other times, he went without so that they wouldn't have to. He taught them how to ride bikes, helped with their schoolwork, and bandaged scraped knees. When they were bullied, he was their shield. When they felt lost, he was their guide. Now, 25 years later, those little girls had grown into strong, successful women. Each of them had gone their separate ways, some moving to different states, some pursuing careers that took them far from home, but their love for John never wavered. And now they had a plan. They wanted to show him that every sacrifice, every sleepless night, and every moment of struggle had not been in vain. They were going to repay him in ways he could never imagine. The first step in their plan was to buy John a new house. The old one he had raised them in held countless memories, but it was falling apart. Leaky pipes, cracked walls, and an unreliable heating system made winters unbearable. Emily, the eldest, had become a successful real estate agent. She searched tirelessly for the perfect home, a warm, spacious house in a quiet neighborhood, with a big porch where John could sit and read his newspaper, just like he loved to do. When the day arrived, they blindfolded John and drove him to the new house. As they guided him to the front door, he grumbled, "You girls better not be up to something crazy." But when he removed the blindfold and saw the house, his house, he was speechless. "Dad, this is for you," Emily said softly. "Everything's paid for. No mortgage, no worries. Just a place where you can relax and enjoy life." John's eyes welled with tears, but he tried to act tough. "You didn't have to do this," he said, his voice shaking. "We wanted to," said Lisa, the second eldest, holding his hand, "because you always did everything for us." Next, they planned something John had never done, traveling. He had spent his entire life working and raising them, never once taking a real vacation. Ava, the third daughter, had become a flight attendant and used her connections to plan an all-expenses-paid trip for John. They would take him to some of the most beautiful places in the country, New York, the Grand Canyon, and even Hawaii. On the day of the trip, John hesitated. "I don't know, girls. I've never been on a plane before." "Then it's about time," Ava grinned, handing him his passport. "Trust me, you're gonna love it." For the first time in decades, John allowed himself to relax. He saw the bright lights of Times Square, watched the sunrise over the Grand Canyon, and even walked barefoot on the warm sands of Hawaii. For once, he wasn't just a provider. He was someone who got to experience life's wonders. After they returned, it was time for the third part of their plan, a surprise event in his honor. Sophia, the fourth daughter, was a journalist, and she used her skills to write an article about John's life. She reached out to the local newspaper, and soon, people all over town knew about the man who had raised 5 orphaned girls into strong, successful women. They organized a surprise celebration at the community center. Friends, neighbors, and even people John had worked with over the years came to pay tribute. There was a slideshow of memories, a video montage of heartfelt messages, and even a special award presented to him for his selflessness. When John walked in and saw the room filled with people who loved him, he finally let the tears fall. "I don't deserve all this," he said, shaking his head. "Yes, you do," Sophia whispered, "more than anyone." John had always believed in helping others, so the girls decided to continue his legacy by establishing a charity in his name. Mia, the youngest, had become a lawyer, and she worked tirelessly to create the Reynolds Foundation, a program dedicated to helping foster children find permanent, loving homes. When they presented him with the official documents, John was stunned. "You mean, this is real?" he asked, his hands trembling. "It is," Mia nodded. "Because of you, more kids like us will have a chance at a better life." John couldn't find the words. He just pulled them all into a tight embrace. The final part of their plan was the most personal. They wanted to preserve John's story forever. Together, they compiled old photos, letters, and memories into a beautifully crafted book, "The Man Who Became Our Father." They recorded interviews, shared their struggles and triumphs, and captured every moment that made John the man he was. When they handed him the first printed copy, John ran his fingers over the cover. His voice cracked as he read the title. This is my life," he murmured. "It's our life," Emily corrected. "And now, the world will know what an incredible father you are." John hugged the book to his chest and looked at his daughters, the 5 little girls he had once rescued, now grown into extraordinary women. He had given them a home, and in return they had given him the world. After the whirlwind of surprises, John sat alone in his new home, staring at the book his daughters had given him. The house was quiet now, but his heart was full. He traced the cover with his calloused fingers, feeling the weight of the years in every wrinkle on his hands. He had never expected anything in return for raising those girls. To him, being their father was the greatest privilege of his life. His mind drifted back to the beginning, the cold December night when he had first seen their faces in that news segment. 5 little girls, scared and alone, looking for someone to save them. He had been terrified too, unsure if he could be the father they needed. But they had saved him just as much as he had saved them. A knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. When he opened it, all 5 of his daughters stood there, smiling. "Did you really think we'd just leave you alone after everything?" Emily teased, holding up a bag of takeout. "We're having dinner together," Lisa added, "like old times." John chuckled, shaking his head. "You girls never change." "And you wouldn't want us to," Mia said, grinning as she pushed past him into the house. As they gathered around the dinner table, laughter filled the room. It felt just like the old days, except now, instead of 5 little girls fighting over who got the last slice of pizza, they were 5 grown women, each accomplished in their own way, but still his little girls at heart. Just when John thought the surprises were over, Ava cleared her throat. "So, Dad, we have one more thing for you." John raised an eyebrow. "You girls have done enough already." "Not quite," Sophia said, sliding an envelope across the table. John hesitated before picking it up. Inside was a handwritten letter, an official notification from the Ohio governor's office. His heart pounded as he read the words. They were nominating him for the Governor's Medal of Service, an award given to citizens who had made an extraordinary impact on their communities. John looked up in shock. This can't be real. It is, Mia assured him. We submitted your story, Dad. People need to know about what you did, how you changed our lives. John opened his mouth to protest, but no words came out. For the first time in his life, he felt truly seen, not just as a carpenter or as the man who had raised 5 girls, but as someone whose love had made a difference. Tears welled in his eyes. I don't deserve all this. Emily took his hand. You deserve everything, Dad. A few months later, John stood on a grand stage in front of hundreds of people. His daughters sat in the front row, beaming with pride as the governor himself shook John's hand and presented him with the medal. As John stepped up to the microphone, he cleared his throat, looking out at the crowd. I'm not a man of many words, he began, his deep voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside him. I never set out to be a hero. I was just a man who saw 5 little girls who needed a home. He glanced at his daughters. But what I didn't realize was that I needed them just as much. A murmur of appreciation rippled through the crowd. They taught me more about love, patience, and strength than I could ever teach them. Watching them grow into the incredible women they are today is the greatest reward of my life. He paused, his eyes glistening. So if there's one thing I want people to take from my story, it's this: family isn't about blood. It's about love. And I wouldn't trade mine for anything in the world. Thunderous applause filled the auditorium as John stepped back, his daughters rushing onto the stage to embrace him. At that moment, he knew no matter how many awards or honors he received, this was his real legacy. A family built on love. And nothing could ever be greater than that. Years later, the Reynolds Foundation had grown into a national organization, helping thousands of children find permanent, loving homes. John spent his golden years mentoring young foster parents, sharing his wisdom and experience. His daughters visited often, bringing their own families with them. The house they had given him was always filled with laughter, just as it had been decades ago. And on quiet nights, John would sit on his porch with his book in hand, the book that told his story, the one his daughters had written. He would smile, knowing that long after he was gone, his love would live on in the lives of every child the foundation helped. Because love, once given, never fades. It only grows.